In this episode, I am talking about The Apprentice, which is a 2024 biopic directed by Ali Abbasi, written by Gabriel Sherman, and starring Sebastian Stan, Jeremy Strong, and Maria Bakalova. It's a biopic about Donald Trump in the late 70s and early 80s, and it was just released less than a month ago, and I chose to release this episode when I did because the election is in 2 days from the day that this will go live. And I figured, hey, what more fitting movie to cover at that date than a movie about one of the candidates? Yeah, when I first heard they were making this movie, I had no interest. If you follow me on Instagram and on TikTok, if you follow me on, if you follow me on pretty much anything, but especially Twitter, or anything really, it's very obvious where I stand on different issues and political stuff. So, yeah, some people got mad at me a couple weeks ago because I did my ballot a couple of weeks ago. I got it in the mail and I filled it out. I took a picture. I had filled in the spot next to Kamala Harris. I voted for her and I took a picture and I said, in case it's unclear where I stand, and some people were like, "You're voting for the blah 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 blah." I'm like, okay, you have your opinions. I have mine. It's You vote your way, I'll vote mine. I know I had some people say, you should leave politics out of the podcast, but if you know what this movie is, and you know, what kind of movie it is, and you can kind of tell, what I believe before you come in, you can easily skip this. Normally I try to avoid, I share political posts on Twitter and on Facebook and on everything. I usually leave it out of the show, but in this case, I figured, why not? Just once. It's fun. Because when I first heard of this movie, I had no interest in seeing it. It's like, oh, it's a biopic about Donald Trump. Okay, yeah, sure. It's gonna be a propaganda piece where he's this infallible, godlike figure, and blah blah blah. And then I found out that he was suing the filmmaker, trying to have the film suppressed, and that had my attention. What's funny is that Trump unknowingly did the Barbra Streisand effect on himself, because I was not going to see this movie. I know a lot of people were not going to see this movie until he sued. Now a lot of people are seeing this movie. It's like, oh, what does he not want us to see? So, even though I made it clear where I stand, I'm not just going to be like, oh yeah, this movie tells the complete unaltered truth about Donald Trump. A lot of what's in here, I did to kind of do my own research too. I didn't just take at face value, because the director has said everything in the movie is backed up by court documents and testimonies by other people and affidavits, and for the most part, yeah, that's true. That it is, a lot of what's in this has been backed up by other people, but also it is mostly just I'll give Trump the benefit of the doubt on this. It is their word against his, but granted, his word is not exactly worth much. He lies about everything, but anyway, the most disturbing scene, where it's the one thing that I first heard about, is said there was a sexual assault in the movie where he sexually assaults Ivana, and that I was like, I don't want to see that. That one is the most controversial scene. And apparently that's the one scene that really bothered Trump, which I think that would bother anybody, but she said herself in like their divorce proceedings that he did that, but then she later recanted. To be fair, she did recant it later, and she stood by him. So, did it happen? Did it not? I'm not going to say either way. I don't know because I wasn't there. and she passed away a few years ago, so she can't be like, actually, I take back my taking back of the taking back, or how, I don't know. People who like were on his side, they flip flop. They're like, oh, I hate him so much, and then like later they're like, I'm gonna vote for this guy because he's giving me money or something. I don't know. There are a lot of times in this movie, I will say again, uh, to be fair, it feels like you're watching like a prequel movie. Like like the lines and like where this character ends up, and it's kind of like you're watching like the Star Wars prequel. They have to pick up the robe and say the lines like you are now Darth Vader. It's like there's moments like that where like he's having conversations with Cone, who is played, I didn't talk about the actors, is played by Jeremy Strong. I'll come back and I'll talk about the actors in a minute. There are scenes, there's like moments where it feels like they're setting up, like, oh, this is where he gets this idea from, this is why he does that. And it's like, okay, I don't know if this happened. This just feels a little too convenient. Like, there's literally a scene where somebody introduces Donald Trump to the phrase, "Make America Great Again." So, yeah. I'm not going to say the movie is 100% fact. At the very least, I'm going to call it historical fiction, because I at the end of the movie, or like, I don't remember if it is the end of the movie. Sometime in the movie, he it shows Trump going in and getting liposuction and like the surgery on his scalp, and he fully denies it, and that's not. He denies everything. He says he's in perfect health. No one's ever been more healthy than I am right now. Yeah, right. But like something like that's kind of a big thing. And wouldn't they have like records? I mean, I know you can like hide your medical records. I know that's what people are trying to get him to do, release his medical records, and he won't. But I'm sure there are ways to like find that out. I don't know, things he has done. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, liposuctions, that's publicly recorded. And like the hair thing, that's, everyone can find that out. But like, it is kind of a shocking scene. Like he goes under, and it actually like shows, it's kind of a graphic depiction too, where it actually shows like them cutting like fat, like a whole bunch of fat off of his body. And like, it's almost like that scene from Saw, whenever they're like drilling into his skull, they like they like cut away part of his scalp and like stitch it together, and it's like very graphic. I'm like, that could have left that out. That wasn't necessary. But it did show him as being a narcissist, being a racist. His father, Fred Trump, is portrayed in the movie, and as I know, it's documented that they didn't rent to black people. They only rented to whites for the most part, and that's portrayed in the movie. They got a lawsuit against them for that, and they're trying to. That's why he hired Cohn to begin with, and they became like protege type relationship. And I'm going to talk about the actors real quick, because I'm like, in my back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I got to get back to that. Really quick. I just want to say, Sebastian Stan, you know him, his most famous role that I know him from is as Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier in the MCU. He's been in like a lot of those movies, and that's how I know him from. And I thought that he was going to do a Trump impression. Like every single time you see Trump portrayed anywhere, you see people doing a Trump impression, whether it's good or bad, and that's what I was expecting. But no, he doesn't do an impression, which is really good. Like that's actually kind of refreshing. He played Trump, but he wasn't doing an impression of Trump, you know? He was mostly using his own voice, which was great. I love that he didn't try to do like a caricature of Donald Trump, which is, yeah. Maria Bakalova, she's most known for playing the daughter of Borat in Borat's subsequent movie film. And I didn't know this until I was researching for this movie. She was the voice of Cosmo the Space Dog in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I did not know that. That was kind of cool. And then Jeremy Strong, he played... Oh yeah, Maria Bakalova, she played Ivana Trump. I figured that was obvious. But thought I would also say it too, because I was like, who is she? There's only so many people because she could have been. Jeremy Strong is in it, and he plays Roy Cohn, who was the attorney that Trump befriended. And Jeremy Strong, I haven't seen a lot of his movies, but there's 3 notable ones here that I want to point out. He played John George Nicolay in Lincoln. He played James Reeb in Selma, and he played Lee Harvey Oswald in Parkland. So he has, I would say, a habit of playing real life people, but like that's only like a small part of his filmography. He's actually been in a lot of movies. Those are just the ones that stood out to me from the movies that I've seen, and they were real people, which I thought was kind of funny. And then Ali Abbasi, I've actually never heard of him until this. He directed Shelley, and he directed Holy Spider, which apparently are horror films, which I've never seen or heard of. And he directed a Trump biopic, so that's kind of random. I don't know if it was like a passion project or if they handed it to him. I don't remember. But the only thing on here other than The Apprentice that I've heard of is he directed a couple episodes of The Last of Us. So that would be the most recent thing he's done before this, I think. And I'm assuming the attention he got from that led him to do this. I don't know. I will say, this is not a very flattering portrayal of Donald Trump, which I think is good. But at the same time, it's not like over the top, Trump is the most evil person ever, and we're going to show him as a caricature type thing. It was kind of it was an honest portrayal, but it's like a fictionalized honest portrayal, because they very easily could have gone down that over the top villain character that you see him portrayed all the time. Like they could have done the SNL Donald Trump version, which they could have made it a comedy. But obviously they didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad they went the route that they did with this. And they made him a real person. It's like something that I've said in the past. I don't know if I was gonna say. Obviously, I haven't said it in the podcast because like I said, I try to avoid politics. As much as I'm not a fan of him, I don't just automatically believe every negative thing I hear about him. Like, I still do my own research and stuff. So they say, oh, he said this. And so I've watched the whole speech, not just the soundbite. And like, okay, he did say that, but he also said this over here, which makes it sound worse, actually, if you put it together. Or, stuff like that. Like, there have been times where people say that, he said or did something, and I look at the context, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you're missing, like, the bigger picture type thing. And there is plenty of reason not to like him, but we don't need people making up more things. If you start making up stuff and saying, oh, he's evil because of this, then that just kind of invalidates the actual things. And I'm glad this movie doesn't fall into that, where they go over the top and make him out to be this over the top villain, which I think I've already said that, but yeah, it's not flattering, but it is still it's middle of the road enough that I'm sure, like, his biggest supporters, if they're not turned off by this movie, by the fact he's doing it, if they're actually, you know what, I was gonna say that they would still like it, but I can guarantee you that that's not the case. When I walked into the screening, it was packed, which I was surprised by. But I did notice it was mostly older people, and they were all decked out in American flags and MAGA gear. And as I was walking up to my seat, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if they know this isn't a flattering portrayal. And sure enough, it was like attending a Trump rally, because people kept leaving. And cut.